Hey, welcome. My name's Daryl Rouse, and yes, that does rhyme with house. And today we're going to talk about that scenario that you do a listing appointment and you're sitting in your car and you go, wow, that was really smooth. I hardly felt like I was doing anything. It felt like they were doing all the talking and felt like a conversation. And at the end, they just wanted to sign the paperwork. Why did that just happen? It wasn't a struggle. Well, that eventually happened to me. It didn't happen early in my career, but it eventually started happening in the second, third, fourth, and fifth years. And I really looked at that and I analysed it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we get to that point where it's not a presentation and it's more of a conversation? So let's kind of roll back 30 years. I didn't understand at that point in time that nothing is a singularity in real estate. Everything is part of a process. So my first listing appointment I did was literally pages photocopied out of a book. I hand coloured them in because there were no photo or colour copiers back then. So I hand coloured in everything, stapled it, and used as my presentation. And no surprise, I got tons and tons of objections. From that, I became very good at objection handling, but I still got no business because my presentation was so bad, it created tons of objections. Then the second phase I went into, I started understanding the objection process a bit more, including what we call categorization and isolation. If you don't know what that means, just go back a couple of videos and have a look. But once I understood that, my presentation started to get better just as a natural progression, and I started understanding the objection better, and I could overcome the objection and started to get the business. Now that's in my second and third year. But then the third phase of it would be I'd have appointments, and sometimes it was just so effortless. I'd be sitting in my car after the appointment just going, wow, that was so easy. How did that just happen? And how can I replicate that? And what was it? And I discovered it became more of a conversation. In fact, I got away from even calling it a listing appointment and turned it into calling it a structured conversation, because that's really what it was at the end of the day. It wasn't me presenting to them. It was me having this conversation with them that went both ways. I would listen to them, they would listen to me. It was much more involved, and to the point I stopped using the word listing presentation and started calling it a structured conversation with the client. And that's kind of the biggest point I want you to understand now. The third phase, which took me a while to get to, was structured conversations. And I thought about all the objections that I could get in the presentation, which was how I would set up my appointments. I would think, what are the most common objections that I get in this listing presentation, and how would I just bring them up in the listing appointment and handle them? I'd also think of specific objections. If I was going up against, say, the area specialist, a specific objection may be the fact that they sell a lot more property than me in that area. So how do I overcome that? How do I bring that up in the presentation, handle it so it's not an objection at the end of that presentation? And so that's what I did. When I had a listing presentation coming up, I looked at common objections, specific objections, and I'd weave them into my presentation. Then I would show up at the door and I'd go through the house, do all the formalities, obviously. Then I'd sit down, and my first question to start the conversation would be, so tell me about your previous experience selling a house. And they'd tell me about the company, how they picked the company, how they picked the agent, what the agent did marketing-wise, how they found buyers, pricing of the property. They would talk about all those things, and as they're talking about them, I'm asking them questions back. We're having this conversation. And I would weave in little questions like, well, was that agent the area specialist? And if they were, it would then give me the opportunity to talk to them about why the area specialist is also the person that has the most unsold property at any point in time in the area, and how it's an advantage not to go with them and to go with me, because I'm going to be listing one property and focusing 100% of my time and effort on selling it. I don't have to divide my time up between 10 properties. So that's how I'd structure my presentation, with lots of questions, and my ability when they answered a question, if there was dead space, I could then do little prompts to ask them questions like, do you understand how agents price property? And we would go off in that direction. And do you understand why if you talk to 3 agents, you'll get 3 different prices and why? So that would allow me to address objections like, that agent over there told me a higher price. I could address the fact that that agent is in fantasy land and they're trying to buy the listing. And that would take away that objection in the presentation. So the whole objective of this structured conversation was to take away objections, to assume the objections I'm going to get, even when they're not verbalized, to weave them into my presentation so they didn't come up. So at the end, the signing of the paperwork just happened naturally as a function of a good, structured conversation. That's it. Now, a couple of things to remember. I always let the client do lots and lots and lots of talking. And that's a funny thing that if you ask questions and allow the person to talk without interrupting, they feel like you're better than everyone else in some regard because you haven't interrupted. I would not interrupt at all. And still to this day, I'm still selling real estate. If a client starts talking, I'm literally trying to bite my tongue to stop myself jumping ahead of them and going, oh, I know. Oh, no, I know. I've got to stop myself doing that and know that just let them talk, and that's the best way to get business. And that's how they start feeling comfortable with you, and that's how you get the business. But I would always do things like, if I made a statement, I would ask a question at the end of it. So if I made a statement that our company is a small boutique office and here's the big advantage to you, does that make sense? I would ask that question. Do you see how that could be a benefit to you if I go ahead and list the property tonight? So I'd always end my statement with a question. If they ask me a question, I'd always answer it and roll a question back to them to keep this conversation going. And that was the secret to the third phase of my listing presentation. So again, I started from being objection oriented. Then I moved into having a better presentation and overcoming objections as part of the process. And then I moved into a structured conversation where it was pretty rare I got objections. In fact, I don't know the exact percentage, but I'd say 7 out of 10 appointments, I got no objection. I just went in, signed the paperwork, and away I went. So that's it. Please like and subscribe. Please comment below. Any comments at all, any questions or any specific topics you want, happy to attempt them for you. Still in the business today, 30-something years later, so everything I talk about is my experience that I've had. It's not the experience of some other person, and I'm just relaying it. That's it. Thank you. Okay, so now a little funny story at the end. Call this my Porsche whale tail story. My first car in real estate when I was in the States was a two-door Chevy Chevette. It was a crappy car. It cost me $300. So embarrassed to put any client in my car, I would park my car in a car park when I could beside a red 911 whale tail Porsche. If you don't know what that is, look it up, because they were the be-all and end-all of iconic cars of that era in the 80s. So the 911 whale tail Porsche, it was in red. Beautiful car. I'd park my car next to it, and then I'd walk out of the office with my clients and go, gosh, I only have a 2-door. Can we take your car? And they'd come and go, oh, yeah, sure. And that's how I got away from having to put people in my car, which I never did till I think in my second or third year when I had a much better car, or actually I had a girlfriend with a better car, so that's how that worked out, but that's also another story. But I was still so bad at my job in that first year, even when clients would take their car and drive me around, they would still come back, and I had one client actually ask me for gas money, fuel money, because I was so bad at doing my job. They wanted me to give them the fuel money because they just wasted 3 hours of their time. So I was horrific still at doing my job, but at least I didn't have to drive my crappy little car. So that's it. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.